to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest Ben Morley, the Director of Athletics at Copper Hills High School in West Jordan, Utah. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. I'm happy to be here.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to school, your first job, those types of things.
Yeah, so I was born in California, moved to Utah when my parents moved to Utah when I was quite young. So from about the age of 2 or 3, I grew up in Sanpete County. So I've always considered myself a small town guy. Went to North Sanpete High School, graduated in 1994. From there, kind of bounced around a little bit. Started out at Snow College, achieved my bachelor's degree at BYU, and then a master's degree at Columbia University in New York. Between then and now, I've been at Copper Hills for the last 16 years, but before that, I kind of ping-ponged back and forth between Utah and New York, sort of chasing one professional opportunity after another before I settled in here in Utah.
Let me ask you this question, which is obvious to me and maybe to some other people. How does a kid that grew up in Sanpete County find his way to Columbia University?
Yeah, I still don't know the answer to that question. I think a little bit of luck and circumstance. It had a lot to do with, growing up, I always wanted to be a lawyer. And I got into it. I got about 3 years into my studies at BYU and did an internship and really started to look at what my life would look like as a lawyer. And I just decided it wasn't for me. And through the good advice of some friends and family members, I decided to change gears and go into education, become a teacher and a coach. And I had never thought of going to Columbia or anywhere else for that matter, but I really wanted to. I wanted to be done with school, to be honest. And I was looking for an accelerated program that would allow me to get my teaching license in as short a time as possible. And Columbia just happened to be one of those schools that had that type of program that I could get a master's degree and a teaching certificate all in one calendar year. So I just decided to do it. I packed up a couple of bags and kind of spur of the moment. Well, it wasn't a last second decision, but it was quick in that I made the decision over a couple of weeks and just decided to go for it. And it was a life-changing decision. The 1 year I spent in New York really kind of shaped, I guess, deciding what I really wanted to do. So I had a chance to do my student teaching there in New York. And I also learned I didn't want to live in New York long-term. But I was able to get the academic work and the teaching license that would allow me to do what I'm doing today. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, universities like Columbia, they value diversity. I think having a small town kid from, the middle of Utah, from the Rocky Mountains, probably worked in my favor a little bit.
That's fascinating. So basically what you're telling me is you turned in your dream of working 70 to 80 hours a week as a lawyer for being an AD where you work 70 to 80 hours a week
Where I work the exact same amount of time. Yeah, exactly.
with less pay, obviously.
With much less pay, but the lifestyle is very different. I did an internship in Washington, D.C. the summer before that for a public defender's office. And I just looking at just the hectic pace, the lifestyle, the time behind a desk, the lawyer that I was working with didn't seem very happy in the job he was doing. It just didn't really appeal to me after I started to really, really look at it. So yeah, those were formative years. But yeah, that's how a small town boy from Utah ends up back east and then back again.
Let me ask you about your youth spent in Sanpete County. What opportunities there were for little league sports, probably baseball, maybe some basketball, maybe not as much as opportunity as obviously at the school where you're teaching in AD
Yeah.
now. But talk about your youth there in Sanpete County.
Yeah, it was my upbringing, my opportunities were very different from what kids in this area in the Salt Lake Valley experience today. Part of that is, the rural versus urban differences. And then part of it's just 20 years later, things have changed. And so growing up in a small town, small high school, being very much consumed with athletics, like it's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, whether it was baseball in the summertime, basketball in the wintertime, eventually I picked up football. So I was able to play three sports at the high school level because I was athletic and motivated. Um, and but on the flip side of that, I didn't have the same club opportunities, that kids have today. Like young kids can really get started at a young age now, albeit it's a lot of times it's the parents that are kind of pushing them in that direction. But there were no club sports in Sanpete County. There was junior jazz. You could play junior jazz, and there was Little League Baseball. And I played on the Moroni Gulls, and I played my junior jazz, and that led me to be able to really, once I got to high school, just do anything I wanted to do. I don't think, man, if I had tried out with my athletic ability, if I'd have tried out for a team here at Copper Hills, I would have been cut on the first day. But in a small town where the athletes all kind of do everything together, it made it a very rewarding experience as a high school athlete. You're kind of coached by the same coaches. Your head football coach becomes your assistant basketball coach. Your friend on the team who's a quarterback becomes your point guard. You just carry those relationships throughout the year, and it's just a very different experience than what kids in 2024 at a large high school like Copper Hills experience.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you about some of the mentors, the examples, teachers, coaches, parents that you've had in your life that have made a difference for you.
Yeah, I think with coaching, there are two individuals that really stand out. One is Mark Wooten, who retired recent. Well, he stopped coaching football at Pleasant Grove High School recently. He's still on faculty there, but when he first started out coaching, he came to North Sanpete, and that's when I was I think I was a sophomore when he started his first year. And so I got to play for Mark, and then he was one of those people that really encouraged me to look at education and look at coaching. I've always valued his opinion greatly. And then when I did get my teaching license, an opportunity at North Sanpete opened up. I was able to go back to North Sanpete and coach at the same school that I had attended, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So now my former teachers are now my colleagues, my former coaches are now, my colleagues on the field. And so being an athlete, being a football player under Mark, and then also being able to coach with him, He really showed me what it took to be successful as a coach. And it had very little to do with the X's and O's, and it had everything to do with relationships and everything to do with just loving the people around you and trying to do right by them. Mark had this I'm sure he still has it today, this mantra that he lived by, that he just tries to inspire one person every day. And he feels like if he can do that, then it's a successful day. So he had a profound impact on me. Another coach that I coached with at North St. Pete was Blake Turner, who would eventually move on to Millard High School, where he's still coaching and teaching today. But he was the wrestling coach there, and we coached football together. And he really helped me learn some of the same things, relationships are what matter the most, but just having patience and how to deal with difficult athletes and difficult parents and all of the problems that come with coaching. He really helped me navigate those pitfalls that come up. And then I think the other person that more recently that has had quite a influence on me is Brian Veazey, who is currently he's the district athletic and activities director here in Jordan District. And he, before that, he was, well, I'm sure you probably know this, he was principal here at Copper Hills.
Right.
And even before that, he was an assistant principal here. So when I was teaching and coaching here, he was assistant principal for a while. He came back. I was still coaching, but eventually would step down as the head girls basketball coach. And he gave me the opportunity to be AD here 4 years ago. And I've learned so much from him, especially just the way that he makes everybody around him feel like they're important. And I think that's something that I struggle with at times. I tend to get distracted. I'm on to the next problem. I'm thinking about what I want to say next. And anytime you're having a conversation with Brian, like you feel like you're the most important person in his life at that time. And he really values what you have to say. And even if you're completely wrong, but just learning how to deal with people and do it with grace and with patience. He's had a lot of influence on me. I really aspire to be more like him in that way, in the way that I treat people. And he left a legacy here at Copper Hills, and now he's doing great things, at the district level. So obviously there've been a lot of people that all of us, we grow up in a village and we're impacted by really everybody around us. But I think those three men in my life probably rise to the top of the list.
Great list of examples. Thank you for sharing that. I'm interested, was Sharon Christensen at North St. Pete when you graduated? Did she come along after?
She was there when I graduated. Yeah, Sharon was the AD. I think it was not long there. It wasn't long that after I left North St. Pete as a teacher and a coach that she moved on, and Cheryl Hadley took over as athletic director. But yeah, I know and admire Sharon a lot. She was a great coach, great AD during her time there.
Let me ask you a personal question, Ben. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh boy, so many, so many to choose from. I don't know if it's so much a failure, but maybe a regret, if I can frame it that way. When I was head football coach at North St. Pete for 3 years. I was head girls basketball coach here at Copper Hills for 12 years. So I spent about 15 years as a head coach. And especially in the beginning, I did not do a good job balancing my work with my life responsibilities, with my time with my family and my young kids. And to this day, even though I've tried to kind of, make up for it, I still regret that I didn't do a better job of being able to just turn it off as a head coach. And it's not always the time away from your family, but it's even the time with your family when you're not really with your family. You're not present. You're thinking about tomorrow's practice. You're thinking about your scouting report. You're thinking about the problems on your team. And I did not do well and my wife would very much agree with this. I did not do well at just setting that aside, turning that off, and being present with my family um, when I was away from the school, or taking time to just take care of myself. And it's hard when you're an ambitious young coach, and I see it with our coaches as well. Like, they're competitive and they want to grind, they want to win, and every voice around them is telling them, you got to outwork your opponent. And I think there's some truth to that, but you know, putting more time in does not always equate to working better, right? Working more efficiently, working more productively. That's what I strive to do today. Those are the lessons that I've taken from that, is how to maximize the use of my time, how to invest my time better, how to be more intentional with my time. Because I just feel like I missed out a lot with my young kids and with my family when I was trying to, build a program and do good things for the teams that I coached. So I can't say I've figured that all out, but even though my job today is very demanding, and as you said, it's 60 to 70 hours a week on the regular, I am better at, when I leave my work responsibilities, leaving them mentally behind as well.
Very well said. Let me ask you about the job of AD, and just in the 5 years that you've been an AD, how has it changed? And I realize, let's take COVID out because COVID changed everything for everybody, but
yeah,
taking COVID out, how's the job changed just in the 5 years that you've been the AD?
It's changed a lot. It seems like there wouldn't be that much change in a handful of years, but coincidentally, my first year as AD was that COVID year. I was given the job in March of 2020, and then a couple of weeks later, the world fell apart. And then I go into my first year as AD, and I'm having to worry about, testing protocols and masks and crowd control and, all of those things that we all had to go through. I feel like it was it was a blur. I'm not sure if I learned anything as an AD. I just kind of survived that year. But yeah, so I've been doing it. I'll be going into my 5th year. And I think it's, especially here in our district, it may not be this way in every district, but there have been so many changes in Jordan School District. To the credit of our school board and our district leaders, they've really taken steps to provide more human resources in managing our athletic programs. So changes like making the athletic director position a full-time position, putting a full-time athletic secretary in every school. I think back to 5 years ago. 5 years ago, my job was the job that I do now is probably what the assistant principal over athletics did 5 years ago. And the job of the athletic director 5 years ago is probably what the athletic secretary is doing today in 2024, if that makes sense. So a lot of the administrative and managerial work of this position has been taken from school administration and shifted to the athletic department. And so I am much more of an administrator than I thought I would be when I got into this. There's this perception that the AD is, the buddy of all the coaches, and he's rolling out the scores table for the basketball games, and he's getting the officials and the buses ordered, and all of that takes place. It's still there, but it's much more of a managing people position now than it was, I think, even 5 years ago. So those changes have been quite rapid here in our district. But I do think it is that it is trending that way nationally as well. More and more ADs that I talk to, they've voiced the same changes that are taking place in their district to really build out the athletic department within the school, to make it more autonomous, to give more authority, more decision making to the athletic directors, and more responsibility as well.
Well, let me add a shout out to your district and your superintendent, Anthony Godfrey. You may not know this, but Anthony at one time was the assistant principal at Jordan High.
I think I did know that. Yeah.
In my early years as athletic director there, I like to say that I taught him everything I knew. I know that that's not the case, but the fact that your district now has full-time ADs and a secretary for you, I think is incredible. If I could get the other districts in the state of Utah to listen, obviously, I think our student athletes would be better off. But thanks so much for sharing that information. Talk for a minute about your journey with the UIAAA. You became the athletic director. How'd you find out about the UIAAA? When did you start coming to conferences, etc.?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I found out about it. If I had to guess, I think it was Brian that said, "Hey, you need to get involved in this right away." And so I did, and I just jumped in, started attending conferences right away. I've been to the UIAAA conference in St. George every year, except for the 1 year that we had it here in Salt Lake Valley. Been to the NIAAA conference twice now, and it's just been overall such a positive experience, and it really is. And I've mentioned this. I've made this point to newer ADs. We have quite a few new ADs in our district, and the thing that really has been lacking, although I think it is changing, is there's not really professional development from within the district framework for athletic directors, right? And mainly because a lot of the leadership whether in schools or in districts, not all of them have experience in athletics. And so as an athletic director, you really have to be proactive in searching out those opportunities and building relationships with veteran ADs that can kind of guide you and answer your questions, because the questions that you have, you may not get the answers to if you go to your school administration. But if you go to, the AD at the school down the street, they probably have a solution for that. So, that's my journey with the UIAAA has been from the very beginning, and I credit my experience with the UIAAA and from the workshops to the coursework to the networking and the relationships that I've made with really helping me figure this job out. I mean, I still feel like every day I get up and there's something that I don't know that I'm still trying to figure out. But it's very comforting to know, like, once you've built those relationships and you have those contacts and you've taken steps to work towards your CAA or your CMAA, to have that to fall back on is very assuring. And so I encourage, all of young ADs, like, you just got to jump into it with both feet when it comes to the UIAAA. And we have to treat this job with the professional respect that we want others to treat it, right? And so part of that comes with, or part of that requires being part of a professional organization like the UIAAA.
You mentioned this earlier, and I want you to maybe go into a little bit more detail about the importance of becoming certified. You are a CAA. I think you have been for probably a couple of years now. And I want you to share with members or people in our audience that may not yet be certified and are thinking about it, the importance and the journey you took to become and how it's helped you.
Yeah, as I said, the things that you learn along that journey really do help you be better in the position you're in. I still have nightmares about the legal classes that I've taken, and all of the cases that you learn about, and you know, you don't remember the details of the cases, but you it just changes the way you look at the job. Like everything becomes a potential lawsuit, you know, waiting to happen, and it's a healthy fear, right? Um, because that really is a big part of our job, is looking for those things and making sure we're in compliance with everything from Title IX to district regulations to the UHSAA, just making sure everything is operating as it should be. Um, and then, so there's what you learn from it, but then again, and I'm kind of circling back to what I said before, is it does add a measure of credibility to what we're doing. You know, I'm not one for titles per se, but the fact that we have, you know, we have certification levels that we're aspiring to, it does bring credibility to our profession in the eyes of those that make decisions that affect the jobs that we do, right? So I know it's important to Anthony Godfrey and to other superintendents that there are certifications that are used to uh, to to measure the competency of the athletic directors that they put in their buildings. Not that that's the end all be all of a good athletic director, but I do think it is a very important component.
Let's have you share your observations and your experiences at the most recent NIAAA conference in Orlando.
Yeah, that was a great experience. Again, our district stepped up to the plate here and was able to fund sending all of our district ADs to the conference. As I said, this was my second time, so I kind of knew what to expect. But if you don't mind, I'll kind of go back to my first experience in Nashville. And it was like, the only thing to really compare it to is like traveling to a foreign country where you're exposed to all of these new ideas. Like, you don't realize how many differences there are between athletics in from one state to the next and the job that athletic directors do until you go to the national conference and listening to speakers and talking with people and having them talk about their job, that it's in many ways very similar to what we deal with, but it could be completely different, you know, as well. So it's such a great experience to just get exposed to all of the different ideas that are out there and the problems that are both unique to states and districts, but are also commonly found throughout the nation. It was very eye-opening. And I've said this about the NIAAA conference to many people. I'm always impressed with just how organized it is and how easy, you know, it is to identify the classes and the workshops that you want to take. Everything is very well run. And it's something that I hope to be able to do every year. Of course, that'll depend on the funding that our district and our school has. But if it's up to me, it's everyone who takes themselves seriously as an athletic director should aspire to go at least once and as many times as they can. It really is a great experience.
Great advice. You talked for a moment about the NIAAA and the UIAAA. I think in Utah, at least, we're proud of the UIAAA family that we have, and you're beginning to feel what it's like to be part of that NIAAA family. And so maybe give a comment about that.
Well, yeah, that was another thing that really stood out to me when I went to Nashville the first time. Is like I already knew a lot of the leadership within the UIAAA, yourself included. But then you go to the national conference, and a lot of the same people that are being recognized and that are serving in leadership capacities are the same ones, the same people here in the UIAAA. Like it becomes very apparent early on that we have an outsized presence at the NIAAA. That when it comes to representation, Utah really steps up and has the reputation, I know, within the NIAAA as being one of those states that really goes above and beyond. That was really impressive to me from the very beginning. I kind of felt like Utah is a small, population-wise, is a small state, you know, going to a national conference, that it would just be our representation there would kind of be swallowed up in the larger organization. But it was just the opposite. It was impressive.
Thanks for sharing that. What's the favorite part of your job, Ben?
It's I know this is cliche, but it is the relationships. It's the thing that I miss most about coaching, that I also enjoy most about being an athletic director. As a coach, I don't miss the X's and O's. You know, I don't miss the breaking down film. I don't miss making scouting reports. I do miss the relationships that I made with my players and being a part of something. As AD, those relationships change. You know, I don't have the personal relationships with the athletes that I used to have. I know of them, but the relationships I have with coaches, I think, is what I cherish the most, and that's what I find most rewarding about the job. Is I get the opportunity to support, especially young coaches that are just kind of starting out, and helping them to navigate the challenges and the pitfalls that come with coaching, and just watching them grow and watching them find fulfillment in the job the same way that I did 10, 15 years ago. That's what I like the most. You know, that it's part of my job I'm trying to focus more on, to be honest. You know, it's easy for us in our position to really get bogged down in the details, you know, the 100 emails that I receive every day, or the scheduling officials, the buses, and just making sure all the parts are moving. And in all of that,
100 emails if you're lucky.
If I'm, that's a good day. But it's just so easy, and you know this from your experience. It's so easy to just lose sight of what's most important, and that is continuing to work on your relationships with the people that you serve. Because then when the problems do come up, you're much better equipped to be able to deal with them if you're working with someone that you have a relationship with, that you trust them, even if something has gone sideways, even if they've made a mistake, you're able to work through that in a productive way. That's the part that I definitely enjoy the most, is just being here for our coaches and working with them, and getting to know them and supporting them in their goals.
Let's finish with a couple of questions, Ben. The first one being, I need 2 suggestions from you for a new AD, and they need to follow Ben's 2 suggestions in order to become successful. What would your 2 suggestions be?
2 suggestions for a new AD. Well, I'm going to just tap back into a couple of themes that I've touched upon throughout our conversation. And one is, you can't go into it tepidly. You can't, you know, tiptoe your way into the job. You really just have to dive in. And I remember when I first took this job, that was a piece of advice that Brian gave me as principal. Glenn Varga, who was the assistant principal over athletics, said the same thing, because I was, you know, I'm generally a pretty confident person, but I was, as anyone, I think, overwhelmed in the beginning, because you just don't know quite what to expect. And the advice they gave me was you just got to jump in. You just figure it out as you go, get to know people, build those relationships. And so that would be my first piece of advice. Like, you really have to be proactive. You can't sit back and hope that the answers come to you. You can't hope that problems will go away. you just have to dive in and you just have to do the best you can with it and figure things out as you go. And then the other piece of advice I would give is like do it better than the way I've done it. Like really focus on building relationships with your coaches in the building. But not only that, there's so many people that you depend on. Your head secretary, your financial secretary in the main office, your head custodian. You've got to have a great relationship with them. Your own staff, whether it be an assistant AD, an associate AD, an athletic secretary, student assistants, surrounding yourself with people who are capable and who you can trust. That would be a priority. If I could do this all over again, I would have put even more emphasis on those two things, rather than just kind of scrambling to figure out all the software and Arbiter and how does the calendar work and this and that. Like that comes, you're going to be forced to learn that either way, but you got to be intentional about the relationships around you that are school wide. Like it's from, like, as I mentioned, like from teachers to administration to custodians to your lunch workers. Like you have to have a relationship with everybody to do this job well.
Well said. Thanks for sharing that. We'll finish with this. Ben,
Okay.
what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I don't know. I feel like we covered a lot. Maybe you can give me advice. I'm still only 5 years into this. What advice would you give to a 5-year AD still staring down 10, 15 years in this job?
My advice would be just keep doing what you're doing and stick to your principles, and your advice about relationship matters, and make sure that you build those relationships so when there are tough days, you have people that can help you and people that can share with you, because everyone thinks, well, it's great. The AD just shows up to the game and watches the game and goes home, and we all know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And so I would continue to get involved in the UIAAA, continue to seek those leadership training courses, continue professional development, and think about becoming a CMAA. So that's what I would say to you.
Yeah, that's definitely on my radar and one of my next steps for sure.
That wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Ben Morley, Certified Athletic Administrator and the Director of Athletics at Copper Hills High School in West Jordan, Utah. Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.